Hello and welcome to the installation guide for the R1250 GS. Now up here on the right hand side are the chapters and the timestamps. I've added them in at the beginning of the episode to help you with the process of installation. Now not everyone's going to need to follow this episode from start to finish, but I think there's going to be quite a lot of you that will find it useful. But once you've watched it once from start to end, then you can decide which part you need help with and then use these chapter markers. Now in terms of overall time, it depends on your skill level. For an experienced engineer or a technician, you're looking at spending between an hour and an hour and a half, depending on the tools you use and your experience. But I think for most people that have never tackled anything like this before, it is fairly easy and it is straightforward. You're going to need between 2 and 2.5 hours. So let's get started. So you've now received your Visor Technic lights, you've opened the box and now you want to know how to install them. Well, that's what today's all about. Today really is a guide to assist you in the installation of these lights on our BMWs, but it's no substitute for reading the instructions. So the way I've designed today is really to run alongside the instructions that you're going to find in your kit. Now this is really important because not all bikes are the same. Some geographical locations have different connectors, and as it turns out, BMW use different coloured wires in their wiring loom depending on the year, the model and the location of you and your bike. So it is really important that you read your instructions and then use today as a guide to assist you through that installation process. Now, a lot of people think, looking at the comments from the last video, the last video by the way, I'll put a link to it up at the end of this video, but this one up here, if you want a discount for any of the VisorTech products, you need to go back and watch that video. I explain in detail how you can get a discount for your lights. The next thing is looking at the comments from that previous video. A lot of people think that these lights can only be installed on 21 onwards GSs, and that's not the case. You can fit these lights, these bright white DLRs that we have on the front and these multifunction lights on the back, you can fit them to any BMW from 2004 onwards, providing it has external indicators to any of those bikes. So if you've got a 750 or a GS 850 and you want to install these lights and have DLRs on the front and multifunction on the rear, you can do it. And they actually have a set of lights that go even further back into the 90s. So if you're unsure, just go to the Visor Technic website, put in the model and the year of your bike, and that will show you all the options that you've got. So I'm going to call this a global bike because that's the best way I can think to describe it. So this is all of Europe, United Kingdom, Australia, Norway, Sweden, all of Europe, Asia for example. In fact, everywhere else in the world apart from North America. Now the North American bikes are different. They do use different coloured wires on the back. They do use different connectors. So the wiring diagram is different for your bikes. And so the installation is ever so slightly different. And there's a couple of extra wires that you're going to need to connect. But it is straightforward and it is very easy to do. But it is important that you read your instructions. CAN bus modules or CAN bus interfaces? This is another question that I got asked quite a lot at the end of the last episode. So, if you've got a GS or a GSA and you've got lots of additional lights on the front of your bike, you quite possibly have a CAN bus interface module installed underneath the seats on the rear of the bike. Now those modules interface with the standard BMW CAN bus system to give you much finer control of what goes on when you press the different buttons on your bike to turn your lights on. So the Visor Technic system will install nice and simply with these interface modules. All you need to do is let VisorTech know when you place your order, which type, which brand, on which model you have of interface and the year and the model of your bike, and they'll help you out with the additional wiring diagram and the installation instructions. So what we're doing today is a standard basic install. We're going to use all the parts that come in the Visor Technic kit, and some basic tools to complete the process. But just bear in mind, if you are a professional, if you are a qualified technician or a mechanic or you're an engineer, there are of course other tools that you can use that will speed up the process, and there are some other bits of equipment that you can use to do a slightly different finish when the whole job is finished. But what we're focusing on today is the standard basic install that 95% of you are going to follow, and everything that we've got in the kit is more than sufficient to give us a wonderful solution once they're all installed. So let's start with the rear of the bike. So these are the basic tools that we're going to use for today's installation. So let me just run through them with you. So at the back here, this is a roll of duct tape. This is a roll of electrical insulating tape. We've got a selection of old used cardboard. We've got a pair of basic side cutters, a pair of wire strippers, a pair of long nose pliers, and then we're going to need a TX40, a TX30, and a TX25. Now the TX40, we're going to use a 3/8 ratchet with the TX40 because there are 8 bolts that we need to remove that are quite tight. So having a 3/8 ratchet, either with a long extension bar or a short one, is going to help us achieve that job. We're going to need a 10mm spanner and then 3 screwdrivers, a short flat blade one to help us undo the clips, a small medium-sized Phillips screwdriver, and then a drive for this TX25 and this TX30. And then the only additional thing really here, this is a 350mm long cable tie. If you're installing these on the GSA, you might want to get a longer cable tie. You can get these of all kinds of lengths, 1/2 meter, 600mm. The longer one that you have, the better. So when you open your Visor Technic box, this is what you're going to find inside. We've got a Don't Be Dim sticker, we've got our 4 indicator assembly units, 1 set of instructions, and then at the front here we've got 1 box with the DTC. It's highlighted with the letters DTC. This indicates this is the PCBs for the front of the bike, daylight turn signal controls, and then the other box in red has RBT, rear brake turn. We're going to use those on the rear indicators. These have 4-pin connectors and these have 3-pin connectors. And then in terms of the packs, this is what we just need to go through. This pack here, this has 2 2-pin connectors, which we're going to use in combination with the DTC, which is on the front. This packet here has the 4-pin connectors, and we're going to use that in combination with the RBT PCBs on the rear. And then in the middle here we have our electronic relay, which is fairly straightforward. We'll come to that as we go through the install, but what I'm going to go through in a little bit more detail are these 2 packs. This is the brake install kit and this is the drive install kit, and they are different. Just bear in mind that inside the packets there are more connectors and more cables than you're actually going to need for this install. And I actually think that's a great idea because it gives you some flexibility in terms of how you're going to mount it, and you can obviously join cables and make them even longer if you wish to. So let me open up these 2 packets and show you what's inside. The rest is really straightforward, and as we go through the installation you'll see when we use these and these ones and the wiring harness and the indicator units themselves. So we're just going to have a look at these. We're going to talk about the brake install kit in a moment. We'll talk about that. But first, the drive install kit. These are the items that are inside the kit. We've got our 2 keys that are going to hold the indicator modules to the stalk. And then we have 3 different black wires. Now 2 of them are identical in length, and they've got these pre-terminated ends which we are going to use to connect our indicators together on the front. Now they are both the same length. One we're going to use to go from the front left-hand side of the bike to the front right-hand side of the bike, and we're going to mount that underneath the headlight, and you'll see this later in the video. When you've installed it, you'll be able to cut this to length and cut any excess off. The second one, again bear in mind these are the same, so you can use either one. We're going to use over here on the front right indicator, and the cable doesn't need to be this long, and we're going to make this cable, I would think, about 6 inches, 150mm long, to give us plenty of room to work, but we're going to have some excess once we cut this to size, and when you watch the rest of the video you'll see that my one is already pre-cut. And then finally, we've got the long black cable. This is going to go from the front of the bike to the back of the bike. It is 6 foot long, or 190 centimeters, 1.9 meters long, and we're going to use this from front to rear. Now, just in case you decide to route this cable in a different way or a different place, and you just have a different preference in terms of mounting this cable from the front to the rear, you may need to extend this cable. And this is why Visortech have included this little connector. You'll notice there's a difference between this one and this. They look similar, but this has got a red end on both ends. This one has a grey terminal on the end, and this is the posi tap that we're going to use for the connection of the red Visortech cable to the number plate feed on the rear tail unit. And of course, we've got our two posi twist terminals, which we'll show you how to use them as we go along. So inside the brake install kit, these are the components you're going to find. Now for the global bikes, that's for the United Kingdom, all of Europe, Australia, Norway, Sweden, in fact everywhere apart from North America, the only items that we need to use from this kit are these two here, the two keys that hold the indicator to the indicator stalks. So in effect, those two black cables, those two grey cables, and all of these connectors we're not going to use. We just need these two parts from this kit. Now, I asked Visortech why they do this, and it turns out that what they want to give you are some additional connectors in case you want to use them. And of course, this kit then can be used for the North American market where these cables would be used. But all we need for our installation are these two keys. The first three things that we need to remove: the pillion seat, the rider seat, and the battery cover. Now, the battery cover is held on with a little tiny TX25. That's where we're going to use the first TX25. I'll show you how we're going to do that in a moment, because we need to disconnect the battery. And we're also going to use this little tiny flat blade screwdriver if, like me, you've got the heated seat option. I'm going to show you a close-up in a moment of how to get the connectors off of both of those seats. It's very easy, and if you just follow what I'm going to show you, you won't break anything. And then finally, before we move on, this is the harness that comes with the Visortech kit. At the end of the harness, you're going to find a little inline fuse holder. Pull back the cover, and underneath you're going to find a little 10 amp fuse. It is really important you don't miss this part. We're going to wiggle that and take that 10 amp fuse out, keep it somewhere safe, and then this harness is ready to install later in the process. So let's get the seats off. I'll show you how those connectors come off. So if you do have seat heating, you're going to find a connector like this for both the pillion and the rider seat. There is a little tiny tab that if you push in with your fingers or a screwdriver, you can see right here this little tab moving in and out. All we need to do is grip that little lever and then gently wiggle, and it comes out. It's very, very easy. It's the same process for the rider seat. These are handy connectors, so when you go to reinstall it, you can't install it the wrong way. The connector won't let you do it. It'll only go one way when we're doing the install. So the next thing we need to remove is the battery cover, and we need to disconnect the battery by removing the negative terminal. So TX25, the cover's held on in three places. There are two push connectors, one in the bottom, one in the top right. Put your finger underneath this bottom edge and lift, put your two fingers in here, pull gently, and the whole thing comes off. There are these little lugs that locate in these rubber grommets, top and bottom. Put this somewhere safe and don't lose the screw. Now the next thing we need to do is disconnect the battery. You're going to need your 10mm spanner. These are sometimes a little bit tight to start with, and just tap them. And then these terminals will come off very easily. And this is where our first piece of cardboard comes in. You're going to lift the negative terminal up ever so slightly and then slide in that little piece of cardboard, and that just isolates the negative terminal from the battery, and we know our bike is safe. So we can now move on with the rest of the install. So working on the rear of the bike, we are going to remove two large sections. They're very simple, very easy to do. You can't get anything wrong doing this. We're going to remove the grab handle assembly, which is held on with just 4 bolts. Once we've got that off, we're going to remove this grey housing. Now you might think this is a bit of an overkill, it's too much work, but believe me, when we remove the grab handle and we've removed this grey housing, which is also only held on with 4 bolts, we have so much more space, so much more room, and importantly, when we start putting the wires to that rear tail light to get that trigger feed, that 12-volt trigger feed, it's so much simpler. It's much easier to do it this way than it is to struggle trying to work from the underside of the bike. So let's remove these 2 items. So now we can clearly see all 8 bolts that we need to remove. So first, we're going to remove the rack. The rack is held on with 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. They're all TX40. We're going to remove the rack first, and then secondly, we're going to remove this complete plastic housing. You won't believe how simple it is to get off. Now I'll speed this next bit up because you don't need to watch me. Just bear in mind, the first time you take these bolts out, they're going to be quite tight to get out. You're going to need to put some effort in to get these bolts out. And that's because the bolts are Loctited into place. And when we go to do the reassembly, I'll explain what we're going to do when we refit them. But let's remove it. I will speed it up. We're going to use a small piece of cardboard so that we can't get the location of these bolts incorrect, and just push the bolts through the cardboard like so, the 2 short ones on the rear and the 2 long ones in the front. This way we can't lose the bolts and we can't get them in the wrong place. And then this rack assembly is just going to lift straight off the bike. So then we have much easier access to these 4 bolts. Again, they're quite tight to start with, but this comes off very quickly. And again, our second piece of cardboard, bolt safe, we can't get them wrong, we can't lose them. Put them safely to one side, and then look how easy this is to get off. There's nothing really to do, it just lifts straight off the bike. So now you can hopefully see, with just removing those 2 large units, we have so much more space to work on the bike. We can completely get to everything we need to, the 2 indicator connectors, and most importantly, the tail light and the feed to the brake light. So when we get round to installing the rear, we now have open space, lots of room. We haven't got a little tiny space to work in, and when we feed the wiring loom through the chassis, it's much easier with those 2 items removed. So now we get to the point where we're going to install the wiring harness. The 2 additional things we're going to use at this point are the long black cable and a roll of electrical tape. Now we're going to use this cable because all 4 corners of the bike require an additional 12-volt feed for those super bright lights. So this is the long black cable. It's approximately 2 meters or 6 foot long. And the electrical tape, what we're going to do, we're going to unravel this and mount this along the length of the wiring harness, and we're going to attach it with the electrical tape. So we're going to use 4 or 5 spots along the harness to keep this firmly in place. Let me show you what that looks like when we're finished. What we've done, we've mounted the long black cable to the wiring harness. I've used electrical tape and I've mounted it in several points along the cable. We just need to bear in mind that this end here, this is the relay end, and we need to leave approximately 10 centimeters or 3.5, 4 inches free, because we're going to join 4 black cables later on the installation process. But the key thing is the long end of the cable, we need to leave that free, and that is at the battery terminal end. This cable here, this is what is going to go to our indicator on the front right hand side. Now I've used electrical tape. You can of course use cable ties. If you want to cable tie it in place, it's entirely up to you how you do this part. Let's move on and let's fit the wiring harness. So let me just show you something you can do if you need to do it with your install. So these 2 cables here are the same length, and we're going to use these to connect our indicators to the PCB. So if we're going to take this one here, this will be the one that we use on the right hand side of the bike, and it doesn't need to be this long. So we're going to cut this one, I would say about 6 inches. That's more than enough space to work with, and we're just going to cut this cable off like so. And then later in the episode you'll see where we're going to use this short cable. So we put this to one side for the moment, and then we've got this extension, if you like, which we can join if we need to the long 6-foot cable that's going to run from the front of the bike to the back of the bike. Now just in case you need to extend this cable, this is why the Visor Technic team have included this additional double-ended red connector so that we can join these two cables together if we wish to. So I'm just going to do this for you now, just in case, depending on how you route your bike or how you route your cables through your bike, you might need to do this. And I don't have a GSA. The GSA has got slightly different panels on it, and you may well need to extend the cable. So we're going to trim these to about 10 millimeters or 1 centimeter at either end of these two cables, and it doesn't matter which end you use, it's just a straightforward cable. And then this red connector, we're going to unscrew the first cap and slide it over the end here like so. We're going to unscrew the second cap on the other end like so and feed it over this side. So now we've got these two ends ready to connect, and we're going to join it in the middle with this little device in the center. So we'll just do one side at a time. So just twist that a few turns. Inside the connector, you're going to see an inner core, which is metal, and we want to place this cable just inside there, like so, and then slide that screw connector on the end and gently, holding this side, gently screw that tight. And after a couple of turns, you'll start to feel it tight, and now that's already got that cable, but we're just going to continue to turn so that it's really tight. And then we can do the same with the other side. We're just going to twist that end a couple of times. We're going to put these connectors, the wire in the center here, like so. Bring this threaded part up, holding the center, so we're turning the end. And after a couple of turns, again, you'll start to notice that it's got this tight. Keep turning, like so. And then this cable, that is pretty tight. That's not going to come off. So you've added this 6-foot cable. You've now added, I would say, looking at the length of that, about another ½ meter to the length of the cable. So you've got lots of options with the kit, and you can extend this one if you need to. So now we're working at the battery side of the bike. We're going to take the end of the wiring harness that has the micro relay on, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to push this gently underneath behind this and bring it out here in front of the shock absorber. There's quite a bit of room under here, so it's not a big struggle. So we're just going to feed this through like that and leave the battery terminals at this end loose. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take the end and we're going to move it through this gap here. You might just make out my finger sticking out the top. There is plenty of room, and the micro relay is designed and built flat precisely for this job. So as you can see, it just gently passes up through here without any real problem, and we just pull the wires through. You might find this a little fiddly, but actually it is fairly straightforward to do. Don't worry about deciding where we're going to position this for the moment. What we're going to do now is lay the harness all the way along the inside of the rear subframe. Let me show you what that looks like when we're finished. Now we've got the harness through the first part at the beginning of the subframe, what we need to do is move it underneath this bar. And again, because the relay's flat, it will very easily just gently come underneath there. Gently pull these wires, don't tug them, and then you can see that we can very easily and neatly lay that relay and the cable all the way to the back of the bike. So now you can see where we've mounted the harness. We've come up through this small gap here, and we've mounted the harness alongside the inside of this plastic housing. And we've laid it flat against the chassis all the way along up here until the very end. So the end of the harness here, where we've got this micro relay, will just eventually, once we've tidied all these wires up, sit neatly out the way at the back of the bike. So this is what it should look like once you've finished installing the harness. Let's move on. So now we're ready to start working on the front of the bike and fitting the indicators. But first we need to remove 3 panels. We need to remove this, the right hand side, and we need to remove the left hand one, and we also need to remove the beak. They are straightforward and easy to get off, and I'm going to show you what you need to remove. Just bear in mind, this is where there's a bit of difference between the GS and the GSA. This being the GS, the GSA is ever so slightly different, the panels are bigger, and you might have some additional screws to take out. But we're going to need a Torx 25. Now these are very easy to take out. You can't really get this step wrong. Just bear in mind that I'm only going to show you one side. There doesn't seem much point doing both sides because it's the same process. The only suggestion I've got is as we used earlier on with the two parts of the subframe cover we removed, use a piece of cardboard and push these screws through because they are different sizes and different lengths. And this just ensures you can't lose the screws and you know which position they were in when you took them out. So what I'm going to do now is I'll reposition the camera so we can look from the underside. Now there are only 3 additional screws. 1, 2, 3. I'll show you where they are, and then there is one additional clip up the top here, but it's very easy to get off, and I'll show you what you need to do. Let's have a look underside. So now we're looking at the front right-hand side from underneath. Now you can clearly see the 3 screws that we're going to remove. There's this one here, Torx 25, this one up here, and this one at the very top. These are the only 3 additional screws that we need to remove. So we're on the front right-hand side of the bike. We've removed these 2 bolts, we've removed the 3 inner bolts, and it's just a process now of popping this cover off. Now the key thing with this is you're not going to go forward or back, you're going to come directly towards the camera. Pull the panel out, stick your 2 fingers in at the top, couple of fingers here, and one firm, swift pull outwards. That's it. And it's held on with this expandable metal clip, and it connects here on the panel. Now, I'm not going to show you the reinstallation because it's just going to be a reverse of what we've done. But just to show you how this panel goes back on, you don't need to be worried. We're going to offer it up. We're going to line up this hole and this hole. You really can't get this wrong. If those 2 bolt holes line up, the placement for the metal clip is there, and all you're going to do is one firm push inwards. Have a listen. Clip. That's in. Now that is ready for us to put the bolts back in once we finish the rest of the installation. So once we've removed the 2 side panels, the next thing to remove is this beak assembly. This is actually easier and simpler than it looks. So we've got one screw which is always visible by the side of the handlebars, and then this one which is normally hidden behind that panel that we've just removed. So all we need to do is remove these 2. We're going to remove the same 2 in the same position on the other side, and then there are 3 small bolts at the very nose of the beak, and I'll show you a quick video of those bolts as well. So now we're looking at the underside of the front beak. These are the 3 bolts that we're going to remove. Again, they're TX25, 1, 2, 3. They are different lengths, so keep them in the cardboard cutouts that we've got. And also just pay attention, we've got 1 pin through a rubber grommet here, on the same on the other side. So the key thing really is just gently wiggling like this, gently spread those panels apart, and it comes off without any problems. Now we've got access to everything we need with the front, we can get these indicators fitted on the front. So now we're going to continue on the front left-hand side of the bike. All we have to do here to remove the original BMW indicators, TX30, we're going to cut this small cable tie and we're going to release this clip, and then this indicator will twist vertically and lift straight out. It really is very easy to get these off. Place your screwdriver blade, remember that short flat blade screwdriver, in here, twist gently, and the connector just comes straight out. Then we make a very careful cut of the cable tie, take the cable tie off, and then all we need to do is remove this Torx 30 and then the indicator turns vertically and will pull carefully out past the back of the fairing and out through the hole. So now we're ready to install the VisorTech indicator on this side. So now we're ready to assemble the indicator before we fit it to the front left of the bike. Couple of things to pay attention to. As we did with the rear, we need to make sure that the housing we choose, bearing in mind this is the front of the bike, this is the direction we're looking, and this is the front left. We need to make sure that the water drain hole is going to be at the bottom when we mount it. The second thing is the key. Don't forget that the words bike side on that little clip need to be facing the inside of the bike. Then all we're going to use is one of the indicator cables for the front, and we're going to use this medium-sized black cable. Now this is the 12-volt feed that's going to run from the front left of the bike to the front right of the bike. And this is going to provide us our additional 12-volt feed to give us those super bright daylight running lights. Now on the PCB itself, we've got 3 connections. We've got turn plus, which is going to be for the blue cable. We've got E minus, or the ground connection, that is going to be the brown cable. And then in the middle here, we've got plus 12, and that is going to be the black cable. So this is really quite easy to assemble. Just take your time. We're going to feed the blue one through first, because that's the longer cable, followed by the blue one. And they just push straight through the housing, like so. And then we're going to feed the black cable from the open end from the inside. It's just simpler to do it this way. And then gently pull the black cable through. Now we can mount the PCB. So the first one we're going to connect is the black. The black's going to go to the plus 12 on the PCB. Now bear in mind these are really quite firm, so you have to push them in, but they're not going to be too hard. Then we're going to take the blue cable. Remember, that's going to the turn plus right at the top here. Blue cable, push it on. And then the last one is the brown cable, which is the earth. That's going to go on the bottom one, this one here. Like so, and that's ready to install. So now carefully pull these cables back, turn the PCB over, and then gently push the PCB in. And it's just like the rears that we did earlier on. You're going to need to push that down with your thumb, hold it in place. Now bear in mind, with the indicator lenses, you've got to remember how you put them in. We're going to go in at an angle like this, providing you've got this key in the right way around and it's pushed firmly into place. The lens will go on very easily, like so. And then all we need to do is put the screw in. And as we talked about with the rear lights, these screws don't need to be in very tight. So just very gently, watch how much pressure I'm putting in. Very, very little. And once it starts to bite, which is there, another couple of degrees. So that lens is now ready. We're going to now fit this to the front left-hand side of the bike, and we're going to feed this long black cable all the way across to the other side on the front. So let's install it. So now we're going to refit our pre-assembled front left-hand indicator assembly. We've got the small, thin, long black cable, which will just pass through here. Then we've got the 2-pin cable, which we also just pass through. Remember, your indicator is going to go in vertically and then just gently twist into position. Now, the 2-pin cable we can just easily reach through here. They are the same connectors, the exact same connectors that BMW use, so this is really easy to do. Just bear in mind that little nipple on the end needs to be facing you, and then this just clips into place like so. Now the last part we need to do before we move on to working with this black cable is put a cable tie back in place, just to hold everything neatly. The cable tie inserts vertically from the top, like so. Now before we do it up tight, just make sure that there's no excess hanging from the inside of the bike here. So in other words, we just want to move this inside here, because we won't see this once it's installed, like so. Pull your cable tie tight, cut the excess off. Okay, so what we're ready to do now is to work with this black cable. We have to feed this from this side across to the other side, and we mustn't forget to refit our Torx 30. Now the feeding of the cable through to the other side is really quite straightforward. It might be a bit difficult for me to film in a moment, but I'll show you. We're going to go directly straight across underneath the dash assembly out to the other indicator. Let's have a look and see how we do that. So we're still on the left-hand side of the bike. What we need to do now is route this little tiny black cable across, and we're going to go directly in a straight line across through this gap underneath the headlight assembly. It's quite difficult to film, but there is a space underneath the headlight. I don't know if you can see that with my finger, just here, just underneath the headlight assembly, that we can put a small piece of tape to hold this cable out the way, and you just won't see it once the installation's done. So we need to move this across to the other side, and then I'll show you what it looks like on the front right. So now we're working on the right hand side of the bike. We're just going to reach underneath with our hand, pick up the cable and move it through the gap underneath the headlight, underneath this indicator here, and we'll mount this properly through the holes when we get round to it. But what I need to show you, because there's a neat little place where you can secure this cable. So just to be clear, there are two flat surfaces. There's this one here that I'm pointing to with the finger. You can actually see this when you look down from above through the dashboard. We don't want this one. It's 1 centimetre lower and a little bit further back. It's this strip here that's completely smooth and flat. That's where we want to mount the cable. So I've got a small piece of cloth tape, and all we're going to do is just that cloth tape is holding the cable firm and tight against the bottom of the headlamp assembly, and now we've got the cable all the way through, ready for the indicator mounting. So now we're working on the right hand side of the bike. It's very similar to the other side. We need to undo this Torx 30, which I've already undone, take the bolt out. We need to cut the cable tie, which I've just removed, and then this clip is very similar to the other side. Place the screwdriver through the back behind the cable, gently twist that, and that connector comes straight off. The only thing we need to do now that's different to the other side is there is this plastic frame clip, and it just comes off quite easily. Screwdriver gently under here, and sometimes it falls off the back, but that's how the clip comes off. There are two types of nipple. This is an oblong one, and this is a completely flat edge, and it's the flat edge that has to go at the back when we reassemble it. But what we can do now, same as we did on the other side, turn the indicator vertically, feed the cable all the way out. So that's the last of the BMW lights removed. And before we start the reassembly, we now need to feed this black cable that we've just installed from the front left of the bike through this hole, because this is where we're going to do the last indicator mounting. So let's have a look how we're going to do this. So now we're ready to remove the very last panel, and then we're getting very close to reassembly. What we're going to do, we have to feed this long black cable up through here to the side of the tank to the front right hand indicator. And to make life easier, we're going to remove this plastic panel. Now it's only held on with a couple of Torx T25s, so just remove those. Don't lose the screws, and I'll show you how we take this panel off. It clips in. There aren't any clips that you can lose, but there is a nice little way to do it so that it's easier to get off, and I'll just show you that. I mean, it is fairly straightforward. Now the clips are at the top and the bottom. What we want to do is put our fingers in under here and pull it backwards, but we don't want to go up, we want to come slightly down. So lift this side out, put your fingers under here, and remember we're going to pull backwards but down. And that's it, it unclips. Now it's held on with these two quite hard plastic clips. They're going to clip in here and here. I'll just show you how to refit it so that you can do this later on. The key thing is this top one here goes in through this hole, but to go into that last part you have to push it quite firmly. So we just lower it back into place, making sure we start the holes off, okay, like so. So it's in but loose, and we need to use thumb pressure. We need to push quite hard, and you'll hear it click inside at the top. So just have a look. That's it. That's the click you're looking for. The bottom one won't click, but the top one will, and then you can refit your screws. So again, removal, fingers under here, pull back but downwards, and that's it. So the panel's off. Now what we're going to do is we've got much better access. We're going to use that long cable tie, and we're going to feed this cable along here towards the front. Let me show you how we do that. So now that we've got our last plastic panel off, things are moving along quite quickly. What we're going to do, we're going to start off with the black cable that we're running from the harness at the back of the bike to the front. And we're going to take the end and we're going to feed it under this, put a little curve in there, I'll make it easier for you with your thumb and finger, and it'll feed under there and we're going to pull it out. So we're just going around that part of the chassis, then pull it through, make sure it doesn't catch on any other cables, and we're going to move this along through the bike like this. So this is when we use our cable tie. This one's a bit too short, but for 350 millimeters in length, it works. What we're going to do, we're going to pass it through this opening here, just in front of the radiator cap, and it's going to come out parallel with the airbox. So we want this sort of downward motion, and it actually goes in very, very easily. You can do this with one hand, and then look, it pops straight out here. So then we have our cable tie running through there. What we're then going to do is take a strip of cloth tape. We're going to attach it to the end of the black cable, put it on there like so, and then we can just tap it on there onto the end of the cable tie, and then when we pull the cable tie through, gently feed that through there like so. So now we've got the cable through this section. What we are going to do at this point is we just want to tidy up this cable. So we don't want any tension. We're going to tidy this up when we come back to it when we're finished. But what we're going to do, we're going to just relieve a little bit of the tension here. Don't have it tight, just have it a little bit loose. Take a small piece of cloth tape and just secure it to the side of your airbox. And that's completely fine. We'll now move on, and I'll move the camera and I'll show you the last little bit of movement we need to do to move this cable all the way up to the front to the indicator. So now what we need to do is continue to feed the black cable through the bodywork. But actually what we're going to do this time is we're going to go from the inside. And if you can just make out my finger through there, there is a hole in this front subframe that we can feed this cable tie through. And it should pop out here. So then you can see, hopefully top and bottom, the cable tie has gone through this part of the chassis and it comes out here. So now we can again, as we did earlier on, take our cable and attach it to the cable tie like so, and then very carefully pull that, the last part through there. So it's come out at the top. We can then disconnect that from our cable tie, and now this is ready for us to feed through to the indicator on the front. So now we're just going to pre-assemble partly the front right-hand indicator. This is where we're going to make our connections. Bear in mind we've just fed that 12-volt feed from the front left, and it's going to come through this indicator, and we're going to join it in here to the cable that runs from the back of the bike to the front of the bike, and then also this third cable, which again is the black, which we're going to connect to the plus 12 in the center. So this is the exact same as we're doing on the other side in terms of putting the wires through and connecting, but let's just do that and we can just make a bit of preparation, and it saves us having to do this on the bike. So just feed these two cables through. Like so. Give yourself plenty of cable coming out because we need to work in here in a moment, and then we don't have to feed this through because we're going to join this short black one. Now obviously mine's already cut back because I had to uninstall them in the first place to make this episode. So what we're going to do, using the PCB, turn plus is going to be the blue cable. Then we've got earth, which is going to be the brown cable. And then we're going to use the black, which is going to go into the center, which is the plus 12. Okay, so that's ready now. We can now take this to the bike and we can carry on with the installation. Now we're going to use the blue twist lock, and I'll show you how we do that in just a second. We don't need the lens and the screw. We'll leave them on the bench. We need to install this side first. So now we need to continue with installing the right-hand indicator on the front. We've got our two black wires coming through from the inside of the indicator mounting point, and all we need to do is feed those cables through the indicator assembly that we part assembled on the bench. And then we're going to feed the VisorTech cable back through this hole and connect it up. So it is fairly straightforward. You just need to take your time and feed these cables through here one at a time. See, it's come through. And the second one, we just also feed through. So once they're through there, if you then carefully hold those two cables, and then we're going to pass this cable back through the hole, like so. Gently pull the black cables through, move the indicator to its vertical position, like so, and then we're just going to rotate it forward like so that we can work up the front. Now what we need to do is mount the connector. So these VisorTech connectors are BMW connectors, so you can't get this wrong. This is really straightforward. We're just going to feed the cable underneath here, and then we're going to connect it straight into the BMW socket that we pulled it out of earlier. Remember, we need to make sure that red line disappears and it clicks into place. Now the last thing we need to do before we tidy up is refit this little black plastic clip. We are going to put a cable tie in a moment and hold this tight, but we'll do that in a minute once we've installed this, because the cable will then feed back through the housing and give us much more to tidy up. So we've got to do this in a moment. So now all we have to do is connect these three black wires inside this indicator housing. So bear in mind we're working on the right hand side. Don't forget that you need to do up that Torx 30 to hold that indicator housing on. All we need to do is, this one is already pre-stripped, that's the one that's on the PCB. These two we need to trim back. We're going to twist all three together, and then we're going to use this blue connector to join all three wires together, and then we can refit the PCB. So let me do that for you now. So with our three wires prepared, we want to hold all three wires together, like so, and then pass the threaded part of this blue connector. If you look through there, it's hollow through the center, and we're just going to pass that through the top, and then take out all three wires. Now we've got to hold that tight. We're going to twist these three wires together, like so. Then we're going to place the cap, this one over the top, but then we have to move our fingers to the back here. Remember, we're going to have the blue right at the end, so that those three wires get all twisted together inside that blue cap. And actually, when you turn it, you can hear it twisting them all together. And then we just need to do that up tight. Now the way to make sure that we've got everything correct is just check, pull each of the black wires and make sure they're tight. That indicates that all three wires are joined together. So that's all we need to do with that connector. We're going to mount that inside the indicator housing, and this is just a reverse. Now the cable, obviously we've got all the cables sticking out. We can gently pull back the inner cable to give us a bit more room inside here. Just fold the join at the back. Mount your PCB. I need to get the indicator lens. Indicator lens clips on, and then we're getting really close. Okay, so all we've got left to do now, I'll move the camera, is refit the clip and the cable tie. I'll show you that now. So then we just need to tidy up. Don't forget you need to do backup, your TX30 to hold your indicator on. Now we need to replace the clip that goes over the top of the Visortech cable on top of the BMW loom, and then we need to refit one cable tie. So don't forget the clip, as I showed you earlier on, there is an oblong side, and that is going to face the outside of the bike. So we're going to place the cable on top, go over, and that's it. That's all it does. It clips in and holds those cables in place. The last thing we need to do is refit a cable tie, and that will just slide in from the back, like so. We only need to catch one part of the cable, like this. And cable ties, we don't need to yank them really tight. They're just to stop them moving around. And that's it. We've connected our connector, we've put our cable tie back on, our clip back on, our TX30, everything's mounted. We can now start the reassembly. So all you need to do is just reassemble everything I've took off and I've showed you in reverse. It is straightforward, and I've showed you all the tricky parts. So now we're going to disconnect the two indicator connectors on the rear. We've got one on the right and one on the left. First thing we need to do is release them from their metal clips. So just push this down with your finger and ever so gently wiggle, and they pop straight out. Same on the left hand side, just push that and gently wiggle them and they come out. The next thing, you just have to be a little bit careful, a bit of patience. A small flat blade screwdriver, we're going to insert, one side is completely plain. The other side has a little tab. Don't overdo it with this tab. We're just going to put the screwdriver in, and if you can see, the tip of the screwdriver just becomes visible, and that's exactly what we want. Inside there, gently wiggle, and they come apart. Same on the other side. There's only one clip. Place the screwdriver in, wait until you can just see the tip of the screwdriver, then grab that with your fingers and then gently wiggle, and they come off. Now these are now easy for us to remove. We're going to take the tail section off, and I'll show you how to do that. So now that we've got those removed, we've got these indicator connectors free and loose so that we can unscrew this and take this off. So I'll try and do this quickly for you. It's a T30, it's not very hard. They're probably not on very tight. I think it's 15 Newton meters to put them back. And a normal screwdriver is going to be more than enough to get these off. So, 2 bolts removed. Remember what I said, 5 millimeters towards you. Pull it and it drops down out the way, and then those 2 cables gently feed through the holes inside. And that whole assembly now we can take to the bench and fit the indicator units. So let's have a look how we do the next step. So now we've got the tail unit on the bench, we're ready to install the Visortech lights. You'll see from the inside, all we've got is a TX30 bolt that goes straight through. There are captive nuts on the inside. We just need to unbolt these TX30s, and then the indicator units themselves, all I'm going to do is rotate this 90 degrees so that the lens is facing vertically upwards, and this unit will just pull straight out. And then we can do the same on both sides and start the installation. So we remove our bolt, turn the indicator 90 degrees vertical, and it will just pull out once we unclip it on there, and you can remove it nice and easily. So we're going to do the same on the other side, and then we'll start the installation of the Visortech lights. So what we need to do next is install the little harness. We need to do this twice for both of the indicators. Now there are 4 wires, black first, followed by grey, followed by blue, followed by brown. So we're going to feed them through this small hole at the back of the indicator, and we're going to feed them one at a time. Not try to do them all at once, we're going to feed them one at a time. So we're going to do black first, it goes straight through, hold it with your thumb. We're then going to do the grey one, feed that one through, hold it with your thumb. Then we're going to do the blue one, feed that one through, and then finally we've just got the brown one to do, and you might need to wiggle because it starts to get a little bit tight, but that will gently push through there, And then you will end up with, and this is where your long nose pliers might come in handy, just to pull that last one through that last little bit. So once we've got that, all the wires have come through to the inside of the indicator housing. So that's the very first step that we need to do. Now we're going to fit the PCB. So then all we need to do is connect these 4 wires to the PCB. So this is the order in which we do it. On the PCB, you've got the top one which says turn. The second one down says V plus 12. The next one down, the third, is B for brake, and then the bottom one is E for earth. So we're going to do turn first, which is the blue wire. We connect the blue to the top. And they just push on. So just make sure they're pushed on firmly. You don't have to push too hard. So now we've got our key installed, we can gently pull this cable back like this, and then the PCB, if you notice, what Visortech refer to as a key is going to sit inside this PCB. So once we get to this point here, we can ever so gently just push that PCB into place, like so, and then you might just have to hold that in place. Now remember how we did this earlier on? It's got that little key at the top. We're going to go down at an angle, and that will clip into the housing and clip. And then all we need to do then is put our lens screw in, which is a medium-sized screwdriver. So now we've got our indicator assembly ready to install, and this is where you need to pay attention. The indicator itself, where it has the key, there is a drain hole on the top or the bottom. You do not want to install this facing upwards. So in other words, if we install this on this side of the bike, like so, the drain hole would be facing upward. So that's the wrong side. So we need to swivel this around, and we're going to mount this on the other side. And remember what I showed you earlier on, we're going to mount it, the lens is going to go in vertically, twist it 90 degrees, and then we can use that TX30 to install it. So now we've finished mounting both sides, paying attention to make sure that the drain hole on the bottom, both of these indicator lamps, is on the bottom, so that any water that does get in can drain downwards. So now we're ready for the final part. So now we've got our reassembled tail light unit with 2 new indicator housings. We're going to reassemble. I'm not going to get you to watch the whole thing. It is really straightforward. We've only got 2 cables with a couple of wires that we need to feed through the original holes that we took out in the first place. So we've done up our 2 Torx 30, we've done them up tight so that this housing is now firm. We just need to reconnect these 2 indicator cables. So let me show you how I do it. We're just going to loop this cable, feed it underneath here. Bear in mind that these black cables we're going to use later on the install, but just fold this down and you can't get this connector wrong. There is a little tiny nipple on the top of the Visortech cable, exactly as it is, because it's the same connector that BMW use. And then we just slide these together, and if you listen, you hear and you will see a little tiny click. Clip. And then we turn it sideways and we slide it back into the metal clip that the original ones were in. We're going to do the same on this side. Move this black cable out the way, turn that in a loop, turn the connector over so that you've got the nipple sticking upwards, clip the 2 together, have a listen again, and it clips together, slide it into the metal retainer and fold that cable neatly out the way. So then that leaves us these 2 black cables, which we will use later on during the install, but now this part of the bike at the back, we're now ready to move on to the next part. So the next thing we're going to do, we're just going to tidy up a little bit of these cables. So we've now got the harness in the place it's finally going to rest, but we need to move it out of the way for the next part. So just take that out for the moment. Now earlier on, we installed these indicator units, this one here and this one here, and you'll see attached to those are 2 additional black cables. What we need to do now is join all 4 black cables. So we've got the 2 from the indicators, and then if we look at the wiring harness, we've got 2 additional ones. We've got the one that goes from the back of the bike to the front of the bike, which we put on with the electrical tape, and the other one is part of the relay. So we need to join all 4 together. So this is how we're going to do it. First of all, we move this out the way to make it nice and easy. Take the left-hand one, and we're just going to feed this underneath the module, and this is just going to make it a bit tighter because we're going to end up with this connection right at the back of the bike, out the way, and it's going to be very neat indeed. And then we feed the second one through to the back of the bike, and then what we end up with is the 2 indicator black cables towards the rear of the bike. And what we're going to do, we're going to cut them at about this point here so that we've got approximately 10 centimeters of length. So let me cut these cables, and I'll just adjust the camera. So we just cut those off like so. So now we've got 2 of the cables that we're going to connect. We can bring the wiring harness back into place, and then the wiring harness itself has, and we're going to move the grey, the yellow and the red out the way, just dangle them off the side, and we then only have these 2 black cables that are on the harness and these 2 black cables that are from the indicator. So what we need to do is prepare the wires. We're going to use some basic strimmers, and what we're going to do is take off 10 millimeters, about a centimetre, from the end of each of these cables. That's all we need to take off. And it hasn't got to be absolutely perfect. Approximately a centimetre is all we need to take off. Now you don't need to worry because we've got the battery disconnected and we've got the inline fuse that's part of the wiring harness out. So we've got no live wires at the moment, although this is the 12-volt feed. So we've now got 4 cables. What we need to do is gently twist the end of these. You just do that with your fingers, just like this. So once we've got the 4 cables ready, we're then going to use these additional parts that come in the kit. Now there's a red one and 2 blue ones. We don't need the red, and we only need one of the blue ones. Now this is what's going to hold together all 4 of our cables. They very gently unscrew. You unscrew them like this, and then you have 2 parts. One part you can't see through, and that's got a cap on the end. Put that to one side. The part that we need to use in a moment is this threaded part, and I'll show you where we use that in just a second. But first what we're going to do, we're going to twist all 4 wires together. So you want to bring them all in line so that the exposed wire is of equal length or equal position on all 4 black cables, like so. And I'll try and zoom in so that you can see all 4 cables, and we're just going to twist them together like this. Okay, so once they're twisted, what we're going to do is take this blue cap that's got the thread, which is hollow all the way through, and we're going to gently feed that over the top, and then reposition our fingers so that the core is exposed in the center. And then what we're going to do, we're going to take the other side of the cap, and we're going to screw it back on. Now it'll be a little tight to start with, but just gently screw that on, like so. And what that does, in that twisting motion, and you're going to have to hold this quite firm with your fingers, you're going to grip the bottom part and carry on twisting until the cap sits level with the collar at the bottom. Now, all 4 of those wires are actually, there is no way that's going to come apart, and all 4 wires are joined together inside. We don't need to do anything else. We don't need to do any soldering, any heat shrinking. This is more than enough. Now my bike's been like this since August, and I can tell you, although you might not think these are a brilliant idea, they're actually really very, very good. And I can give that quite a good tug, and they're not going to come out of there, and they are joined firmly. So what we need to do now is just tidy this up a little bit. We're just going to add a short piece of electrical tape. This is about approximately 10 centimeters. We're just going to very gently wrap that around to give ourselves some extra protection, like so. And then the very last thing we're going to do, this is why we've put the harness right at the back of the bike, and again we're going to worry about these later on. We're going to then use the cloth tape, the tank tape that we had earlier on in the process, and we're going to take a small part, and I'll have to stand up to show you how to do this, and we're just going to carefully mount that to this little section at the back of the bike. Now all this does really, it's not for anything other than stopping it rattling around, and it just tidies up our job and means that there's nothing floating around, and that one connection's right at the back of the bike, and when we fit that rear subframe, you won't be able to see this at all. So then we've got our 3 cables left over. What we're going to work with next is the red wire. So we're still going to leave aside the grey and the yellow, and what we need to do is cut this to length. We're going to join it to the tail light. So let me show you how that part works. So what we need to do first of all, there's a cable tie on the back. Snip this, we're going to replace the cable tie in a moment, and then that will give us access to the connector on the back of the light. So with our cable tie removed, the next thing we need to do is disconnect the socket that goes into the tail light. It's really easy to do. So on the right hand side, this side of the bike, there is a little tiny tab. You're just going to push that tab in. Now you're going to need 2 flat blade screwdrivers, and all we're going to do is put one against the back edge, push that tab in, and then the connector, as you can see, just pulls clean out. It is not difficult at all, and we want to remove this. So there are 3 cables. There's a brown, a grey and a blue, and the blue actually has a brown flash in it. This is the one we want. This is the trigger feed. So what we need to do now is connect the red cable back here. So first thing we need to do is we need to trim the length of this cable. I would say you need about 20 centimetres. We're going to cut it off here. Don't worry, we can give ourselves a bit more room, a bit more working space, because we can tidy this up in a moment. Then what we need to do, off the end of the red cable, we're going to take the same as we took off before, approximately 1 centimetre. This is where we bring in this little red device. Now the first thing we need to do is pay attention. At this end, this is grey. At this end, it's red. So unscrew the red end. It's hollow. And then we're going to feed that over the cable, the red cable. Okay, so we're going to use that in a moment. The next one we're going to do is we're going to continue to unscrew and take the grey side off. And the grey side, when we take this apart, inside here is a little tiny pin. This is going to make a pinprick into this blue and brown cable, and that's going to pick up a trigger feed. In other words, when this cable receives its power, it's going to send a signal via this red wire to the relay. What we need to do is make a pinprick in that cable. So we're not making any cuts or any interface into the BMW system. Now this is how we do it. So we're going to take the bottom part, and if you have a look, there's a cut, there's a groove, and in that groove the cable is going to fit. So see if I can do this so that you can see. We're going to place this underneath, like so, and we'll just rest that on top of the chassis rail, like so. So we've got the blue cable going through the slot. Then what we're going to do, we're going to take the end that has got the point. Can you see that? It's got a point sticking. The other end doesn't have a point. It's got a flat tip. So make sure you're using the right end. That's got the point on it. And then we're going to screw that onto the top here. Now, once it starts to bite, lift it up, hold the bottom. This is really important. We're not going to twist the bottom. We don't want to put any twisting pressure on there. We want to do our twisting on the red at the top. And just screw it down. Now, it doesn't have to be really tight. What you'll end up with is something looking like that. You've got the blue cable running straight through the middle, and it's held firmly. We don't need this really tight, and that's all we need. That will have picked up a trigger feed. Now, the cable that we prepared earlier on, this red one, we're now going to feed this. If you're looking through the centre there, there's a metal core. We want to go between the outer plastic and the metal core, and then we're going to screw that cap on. So bring the cap up, place the cable in there, like so. It's actually quite difficult to film and show you at the same time. And gently start to do it up. Now what we need to do, because we've already fixed the bottom part, we want to hold the bottom firm and we just want to screw the top. Now, once it's got almost to the bottom and it's still gentle and easy to turn, you can tell that you've got it right because this is already got some tension on it. You can't easily pull it out. So we know we've got it in the right place. So then just continue to keep turning that tightly until you can't get it any tighter and there's virtually no gap between the cap and the red body. And then this is really tight. That's not going to come off. So we don't need to test it because I'm 100% sure this would have pierced our blue and brown cable, picked up the trigger feed. We know we've got this neat and tight. So that is our feed sorted out. So all we need to do now is put some electrical tape around it. So then all we need to do is reconnect this to the tail light, and that's just a simple process, a reversing of what we did earlier on. Except this time we don't need the screwdrivers because we can get our fingers in here and we're just going to push it in, and if you're quiet you'll hear it click in. And then all we need to do then is place the red cable underneath, and we need to use a fresh cable tie to hold that connector back as it was when we found it. And that's it. We'll just tidy that up. What we need to do now is connect the VisorTech harness to the battery. Now, in case you're not aware, BMW have this system whereby you can connect accessories without removing the battery. On older bikes, you would remove the battery and connect your accessories direct to the battery. But all we need to do is pull off this red cap, and then under here, we're going to use a Torx 25. We're going to unscrew this like so. And this is where we're going to mount our first terminal, which is the positive. Nip that up tight, replace the red cap. And the next one we need to do is the negative terminal on the battery. So we're going to need our 10mm spanner for this. We can remove our piece of cardboard. We're going to need the original bolts that held it tight. And what we're going to do, we're going to move that under the fuse, like so. So that's sort of finger tight, and all we're going to do is we're going to move it another 10 or 15 degrees. That's it. It does not need to be any tighter than that. So as far as we're concerned here, we're done. Just bear in mind the yellow and the grey wires for UK, Europe and the rest of the world, we don't need to install or use these cables. So all we're going to do, we're going to trim these back. Are going to leave about 5 centimetres should you want to remove the harness and move it to a different bike. We're just going to cut these wires off like so. What we're going to do is take a small piece of electrical tape, place the cable halfway. I hope you can see that, halfway in like that, and then fold the top over and press firmly like so, and do the same with the yellow one. Place the cable halfway along through the electrical tape, fold it over, press that firmly so that they're out of the way and secure. Okay, so what we can do now is start the reassembly of the rear rack. It's now time for us to refit that 10 amp fuse inside the cap. So let me go and get the fuse. So we're going to lift the cap back, take the fuse, and install the fuse and press the cap home tightly. So now we're ready to put the battery cover back on, but before we do anything else, what we're going to do is turn the ignition on and do a test to make sure everything is working as it should be. So now we're going to turn the ignition on and let's have a look and see what it looks like. Soft start sequence okay. Lights come on, super bright. Okay, let's have a look at the rear lights and then we can finish putting the panels on. So before we start reassembling the rear, we just want to check that everything on the back of the bike is okay. Ignition on. Soft start begins. And up come the side lights. Brake lights are okay. And the indicators, I mean, just look how bright they are. Indicator with brake light off. That is so much brighter. And the last thing, we'll just check the hazards. With the brake lights. Okay, so everything's looking good. We can turn that off. And then we can get on with putting the two large subframe top parts back on. So we've put the rear rack on, the lower one first. It's on loosely at the moment. I just wanted to show you how neat our installation is. There are no wires, you can't see the relay. Everything is neatly mounted along that right-hand side chassis rail, and then with those connections right at the back under the tail, which are now waterproofed and we can't see them. So everything looks very neat. Now at the beginning of the episode, when we first took these two parts off, I said I would talk about these bolts. Now the bolts were originally held in with Loctite, and it was probably Loctite 243. This is what BMW or the assembly guys would have used on the production line. But let me share this. When I first took these bolts out, they were very hard to remove and almost equally as hard to put back in. So I think if you're doing this on a brand new bike, you don't need to worry about getting some new Loctite, because putting these in after the first time I removed them, they were still very, very stiff to get in, and once they're done up tight, you're not going to have any problems. The only time I would suggest you think about using something like the Loctite 243 is if you've had to remove this in the past. Now I've had this off 3 or 4 times, different parts of the bike, trying to find the best way to install these VisorTech lights. So I am going to use 243, just a little tiny bit on the end of the threads on all 8 bolts. But I just want to be clear, I don't think if you're doing this for the very first time on a brand new bike, you're going to need to worry, because you'll still have Loctite left on these bolts and you will find them quite stiff to get back in. Don't forget the last thing, we're going to use the long bolts in the front, short bolts on the back, and don't forget your spacers. Let's get everything reassembled and see what she's like. I do hope you've enjoyed this episode. There's a lot of stuff we've covered today, but as you've just seen, these lights are actually fairly straightforward and easy to install. You just need a bit of patience and you just need time. Now, if you're a customer in North America, don't forget VisorTech have got a hotline for you. And if you're in Europe or the United Kingdom, they've also got a hotline number that you can use for some help if you need it from VisorTech. But I think with this guide, you've got enough, along with your instructions, to install these lights. They really are straightforward to do, and there's nothing really technically complicated about installing them. Now, I for one, I'm delighted this episode is finished. It has took me several weeks to film it and do all the editing, and the most important thing, I'm pleased to get these lights back on my bike. I had a week and a bit with the BMW ones on there and they're awful. The difference in terms of visibility and safety, now you've moved to the VisorTech ones, is huge. It's a real big game changer in terms of visibility and safety. Anyway, my name is Carl, the channel is called Just The Way It Is, and I'll see you soon for another episode. But when you've fitted your lights, do drop me a line below and let me know what you think. See you soon.